My name's Catherine Hayhoe and I'm a climate scientist. I study what climate change means to us in the places where we live. So often when we think about climate change or global warming, we think it's about the polar bear or about people who live on low-lying islands in the South Pacific far away. But the reality is climate change is already affecting us right here where we live, and that's why it matters. Our book came out of our personal experiences. My husband pastors an evangelical church here in West Texas, and as soon as people started to find out what his wife did, they started to ask questions. Most people would ask him the questions because they didn't want to be rude. They didn't want to come up to the pastor's wife and say, "How can you believe in this climate change, earth-worshipping religion anyways?" So instead they went to my husband and they asked him questions like, how do we know it's not just a natural cycle? Or, if God's in control, why would we care? Or, aren't those scientists just making it up? And so he would come to me and he'd say, "Hey, I got a good question today." And I'd say, "Well, I don't know the answer, but let's look for the answer together." And then he would go back and give it to the person. He got so many questions that we started to feel like that we need to give people a resource. But when we looked around, there were a lot of great books about climate change, make no mistake. But those books didn't start where the people that we're surrounded with here in West Texas are. Those books started with the idea that, yes, we agree the science is real. Now we're going to explain the science and the impacts and why it's important. But many of the people that we talked to weren't even sure that the science was real. So we wanted to write a book that would answer people's questions starting in the place where they're at, because they're good questions. They're questions that we should be answering. How do we know this thing is real? Why do we think it's humans for the first time instead of just natural factors? Why do we think the impacts are serious? And most importantly, what can we do about it? We know that climate has changed in the past due to natural factors. Changes in the Earth's orbit around the sun, volcanic eruptions, changes in energy from the sun, and even natural cycles inside the Earth's climate system like El Nino. They all affect our temperature, our rainfall, and more. But we know that today, according to natural factors, we should be getting cooler, not warmer. Instead, we are getting warmer faster and faster. And the only reason why the planet could possibly be warming today is not natural cycles, it's not the sun. It's the fact that every time we burn coal and oil and gas, we're producing carbon dioxide, a very powerful heat-trapping gas. That heat-trapping gas is building up in the atmosphere, effectively wrapping an extra blanket around the Earth, a blanket that we did not need. And so just like if you're sleeping and somebody sneaks into your room and puts an extra blanket on you, and you wake up sweating saying, "Hey, I didn't need this blanket," in the same way, the Earth is heating up because of this extra blanket that we're wrapping around it. And that is what we call human-induced climate change. When we look at whether people agree that climate is changing and humans are responsible, when we ask people if they're concerned about a changing climate, there's two groups of people that are at the very bottom of the list. And those two groups of people are white evangelicals and white Catholics. Now that gives us our first clue that it isn't where somebody sits on a Sunday or a different day or not at all that actually determines their perspective on climate change. Because the most concerned people group in the entire United States about a changing climate are Hispanic Catholics. And you might say, but don't they read the same Bible? Don't they have the same Pope? Didn't that Pope write this incredible encyclical about how climate change matters and how it's an issue of poverty and love and care for others? Yes. So it isn't our theology that's getting in the way. In fact, if you look at the #1 predictor of whether somebody agrees that climate is changing and humans are responsible, it is not where or whether they go to church. It is not how much science education they have. It is one thing. It is simply where they fall on the political spectrum. The sad reality today is that for many people, their statement of faith is being written, first of all, by their political ideology, and second of all, by their faith. This shift goes back decades. It involves issues like abortion, right to life, same-sex marriage, even further, back to racism and civil rights. There's been an unholy alliance between religion and politics that is now bearing fruit, unfortunately. And part of that fruit, one of the casualties of the association between right-wing politics and Christianity, is the fact that if right-wing politics says climate isn't changing and humans aren't responsible and we're not going to do anything about it, unfortunately a large number of the Christians who agree with their other values politically will go along with what they're saying about climate change too. The reality, of course, is that a thermometer doesn't give us a different number, depending on if we're Democrat or Republican. Climate is changing whether you believe it or not. And I believe that if you take the Bible seriously, that caring about what is happening to our planet, which is a gift to us from God, that God gave us responsibility over, and caring about what is happening to our brothers and sisters around the world, especially the poorest and most vulnerable of them, that is exactly what we're called to do for Christians. We have a little PBS digital series called Global Weirding, Climate, Politics, and Religion, all the topics you're supposed to never bring up at the dinner table. The reason why we have this series of super short little videos, like 5-minute videos on YouTube, and you can find them if you just Google Global Weirding on YouTube, we have these videos to serve as conversation starters. Because I believe, through thousands of conversations I've had, that we can have positive conversations about climate, about politics, and even about religion. How? With one simple secret. Instead of starting the conversation from the place that most divides us, instead start that conversation from what we actually have in common, from what most unites us. Do we live in the same place? Do we both enjoy hunting or fishing or birding or skiing or hiking? Are we both parents who are concerned about our kids' health? Did we used to serve in the military? Are we concerned about national security? Are we business people who are invested in a healthy economy with local jobs? Are we Christians? Are we Catholics? Are we Presbyterians? Are we evangelicals? What is it that most unites us? Start the conversation from that place. And from that place, share from the heart, because of this thing that we both have in common, why we're concerned about a changing climate. I'm concerned about a changing climate, for example, as a birder, because as climate changes, the Baltimore Oriole might not be native to Baltimore anymore. I'm concerned, if I was a hunter, because here in Texas, the bobwhite quail population, which is a big part of hunting here, goes up and down with our drought cycles, and our drought cycles are getting more intense. I'm concerned as a homeowner because I have family who lives along the coast, and they are at risk, and their property is at risk from rising sea level and stronger hurricanes. I'm concerned as somebody who has had family in the military because the military calls climate change a threat multiplier. It is actually actively contributing to instability abroad that often the US is then pulled into and asked to help with. I'm concerned about climate change because I want local jobs. I want our students who graduate from Texas Tech to be able to get great jobs where they want to in this state. And the wind energy industry, and increasingly the solar energy industry too, are some of the fastest growing industries that supply so many jobs, not just to technicians, jobs in law, jobs in business, in finance, and energy policy. If we start from what we agree on, and then we share from the heart why we're concerned, and then we always, always, always talk about a solution. Talk about a solution that is viable, that is attractive, that is exciting or encouraging. The fact that Fort Hood, the largest military base in the United States, which of course is in Texas, they went with wind and solar energy last year because they would save taxpayers over $150 million compared to using natural gas. Talk about how there's entire towns going green right here in Texas, in the case of Georgetown, because 3 business students from the local college ran the numbers, realized, hey, we could save a lot of money, went to city council and said, would you like to go green? Green as in saving money. And they said, sure, why not? There's so many good things that we can talk about, so many positive ways that we can act. And if we keep those in mind, focusing on what we share, what we have in common rather than what divides us, we can move this conversation forward. So when people finish this book, I hope they will realize, first of all, we know that climate is changing. If we look around just in nature, we see over 26,500 indicators of a changing climate. Don't trust the thermometers, don't trust the satellites, we can throw them out. All we have to do is look in our own backyards to see how trees are blooming earlier, insects and birds and animals are moving poleward, the seasons are shifting and becoming more variable, the weather is just getting weirder. We can see this now in the places where we live. The second thing I hope people will go away with is, we climate scientists take this very seriously. We don't, just jump on the bandwagon and start screaming, it's gotta be humans the first time we see climate changing. No, we look very seriously at all the other reasons why climate has changed. Could it be the sun? No, because the sun's energy has been going down the last few decades, not up. Could it be volcanoes? No, because volcanic eruptions actually cool the earth down. All of those little particles they produce act like an umbrella, reflecting the sun's energy back to space. Could it be natural cycles like El Nino? Well, all those cycles do is move heat around the Earth's system. Those cycles can't create heat. All they can do is move it from the ocean to the atmosphere and back again. So if the atmosphere were getting warmer and the ocean were getting cooler, then we would know it was a natural cycle. But no, the atmosphere is warming and the ocean is warming even more. And then lastly, people say, well, couldn't we just be getting warmer after the last ice age? Actually, the warming after the last ice age peaked about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago. And since then, we've been in a very, very gradual, long, slow slide into the next ice age. Yep, the next event on our geologic calendar, sometime in the next 1,000 years or so, would have been another ice age. And then the third thing I hope people will recognize is the impacts are serious and they matter. It isn't just about the polar bear. It isn't just about future generations. We are seeing changes now and here today in the places where we live. Whether it's sunny day flooding along the eastern seaboard, whether it's stronger hurricanes like Hurricane Harvey, where an estimated extra 40% of rainfall fell during Hurricane Harvey because of a warming planet. 100 years ago, would we still have had a Harvey? Yeah, I think so. But it wouldn't have been as big or as strong, and we wouldn't have had as much rainfall associated with it. In the West, we're seeing larger and larger areas burned by wildfires. Wildfires are still occurring at about the same rate they used to, but when it's hotter and drier, they can burn a lot bigger area. We're seeing property values in high-risk locations, especially along the coast, they've already dropped 7%. In California, a friend of mine called her insurance company because her insurance had gone up 30%. And she said, I've never made a claim. Why is my home insurance going up 30%? And the insurance company said, well, it's because your insurance is subsidizing all of the other risks that people are confronting, not just across the state, but around the country. In some places in Minnesota, their flood insurance and their home insurance has gone up not just a few percent, it's gone up over 100, sometimes even 200% because of the increase in flood risk. Farmers Insurance sued the city of Chicago for failing to adequately prepare for the impacts of a changing climate and leaving Farmers Insurance to pick up the bill. We are seeing impacts everywhere that we live today, and that's why we care about a changing climate. And then the last thing I hope people will leave with after reading our book is that there are solutions. There absolutely are solutions that are entirely compatible with who we are, with our values, and with our priorities. The solutions do not involve destroying the economy. They do not involve turning the government into Big Brother. They involve putting the power into people's hands to generate our own electricity, to provide energy to our poor brothers and sisters around the world. There's over 1 billion people today living in energy poverty with no access to energy or electricity of any kind. And they don't have a lot of coal or gas or oil to use either, but they have a lot of sun and they have a lot of wind. And there's things that we can do personally. Here at Texas Tech, we had a student called Colby May. When he graduated here from the business school, he decided to go and do a degree in missions and ethics at Gordon Cornwall Seminary. After he graduated from seminary, he thought, what can I do? I'm going to open a company that does energy auditing for churches and seminaries and Christian colleges. I'm going to help them save money in their energy bill and also reduce their carbon footprint, so that they can have money to spend on other important things like actually helping people. There are solutions that are compatible with us no matter where we fall across the spectrum. There's free market solutions, like the Republic N Institute led by Bob Inglis, a former Republican congressman. There's bipartisan solutions, like those proposed by Citizens Climate Lobby to put a price on carbon. And it's supported by a bipartisan climate solutions caucus in Congress with over 70 members, and you're only allowed to join if you join with somebody from the other party. So it's 50-50 Republican and Democrat who want a price on carbon. There's even libertarian solutions. The Niskanen Center is a libertarian center that espouses libertarian solutions to a changing climate. Because what's more libertarian than to be offended when somebody else's actions affect your property? So those are the 4 things I hope people will leave this book with. Yes, it really is real. It really is us. The impacts matter, but there are solutions and we can fix this thing together.